Well, if you're looking for a $20 comic book, you're in the league for Mr. Incredible.
Tell me about him.
Well, he's incredible. He's a rock star by day and a superhero by night. He can shoot flames out of his eyes and melt his enemy's brains with his mind.
Yeah, I think I read that one.
Sir, there is no Mr. Incredible.
Incredible!
Incredible! Incredible thoughts, incredible mind. Too many great ideas inside. It's a miracle my head can contain them. My spectacular brain.
It is 4:27 p.m. on Thursday, June 14th, 2018, and as soon as I finish recording this intro, I will be on my way to the AMC Burbank 16 in beautiful Burbank, California, to catch a 6 p.m. screening of Incredibles 2. I'm some jerk with a camera, and welcome to One Movie Later, where I compare and contrast my preconceptions and postconceptions of movies in theaters now. You know, if you went back to 2004 and you told me that when the Incredibles sequel comes out, I would be anything less than obsessively psyched over it and counting down the days until it's released and pouring through every last scrap of info I could get my grubby little hands on, I would say, why are you wasting a time machine on this? Go kill Hitler! The first time I ever saw The Incredibles, it was one of those seminal movie-going experiences that you just never forget. I can honestly say I have never felt more adrenaline walking out of a movie theater, and to this day it's my favorite Pixar movie and my favorite superhero movie ever. It might even be my favorite animated movie ever, if not for a few childhood classics that are just a little too soaked in memberberries for me to judge them objectively. I love the action, I love the comedy, I love the characters, I love the animation, I love the voice acting, I love that it's not afraid to be a real in-depth character study in between all the chase scenes and robot explosions. And especially when you consider everything else that was going on at Disney at the time, its very existence is kind of a miracle. Eisner had just shuttered hand-drawn animation, Home on the Range had flopped, Chicken Little was right around the corner, and it seemed like the only live-action stuff they were putting out was crap like Herbie Fully Loaded and Around the World in 80 Days with Jackie Chan and the Haunted Mansion movie with Eddie Murphy. And in the middle of it all, thanks to the sheer hit-making cloud of Pixar, Brad Bird was able to swoop in and direct this new high bar for multiple genres. It was actually about something, and it didn't feel like it was made in committee. For better or worse, it felt like an auteur's singular vision at a time when Disney just did not make those. And almost from the moment it was released, everybody started asking Brad Bird for a sequel. And for the first decade or so, his answer was always the same.
I love the world and I love the characters. I think the bar at Pixar is set very high. If I can figure out a whole story that holds up, I would be happy to do it.
In the meantime, Disney bought out Pixar and essentially forced them to do a shitload of unnecessary sequels. And at a time when superhero movies just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, who cares where Mike and Sully went to college or how many spy cars you could cram up Mater's asshole? We wanted Incredibles 2! Well, here it is, almost 14 years after the original. They even switched the release dates with Toy Story 4 just to get it out a full year earlier. And one of the big questions is, did they wait too long? When the first film came out, superhero movies were just starting to become the biggest thing on God's green earth. We had 2 Spider-Man movies, 2 X-Men movies, a bunch of old Superman and Batman movies that Warner Brothers had long since stopped making. And apart from a few also-rans like Affleck's Daredevil and failed experiments like Ang Lee's Hulk, that was about it. But nowadays, we're so oversaturated with superhero movies, we gotta combine all the superheroes into one movie just to keep things interesting. But on the other hand, almost every superhero movie released in the last couple decades has been based on a comic book, and The Incredibles isn't. Which means it does not have decades and decades of established lore to draw upon, so if they'd tried to force a sequel out sooner or hired another director for it, that could have been disastrous. So I hope this movie is worth the wait. I hope it blows me away just as much as the original did. It's kind of being marketed as an aggressively stupid Mr. Mom but with superheroes comedy, but then the original was marketed as an aggressively stupid funny fat man fall down comedy. In fact, that's a big part of what made the hidden depths of the first film such an amazing surprise, and I have no reason to believe the sequel doesn't have something equally amazing up its supersuit sleeve. Apparently Frozone has a bigger part in this movie, which I always thought he deserved. And even though we've lost the late great Bud Lucky, the part of Rick Dicker is being played by Jonathan Banks, who doesn't sound anything like Bud Lucky, but is still great in everything, so bring it on. And speaking of the Breaking Saul universe, Bob Odenkirk is also in this movie, and that makes my inner 20-year-old even more excited. And of course, to tie into this sequel, DCA has been turning California Screamin' into the Incredicoaster. I've already discussed that transition in my State of the Park series, and once it opens, I plan to do an in-park vlog about it, so I'm not gonna harp on it too much here, except to say that it's a testament to how beloved The Incredibles is that I haven't heard that much complaining about the change from the park fan base, certainly not compared to Mission Breakout. So I am very much looking forward to this sequel, but I gotta say I have my doubts. Why do I have my doubts? I mean, aside from the fact that I'm a grumpy old man now and it's hard for me to get excited about anything anymore. Well, for one thing, Pixar's track record isn't nearly as spotless as it used to be. In more ways than one. Secondly, okay, I know this isn't a series known for its subtlety. The first film had characters named Elastigirl and Syndrome and the Underminer, but there's still a line, and Screenslaver crosses it. I feel like just saying Screenslaver made me dumber. Get it? 'Cause it's like Screensaver, except we're all slaves to our screens, man! Oh, yes, master, what be thy bidding? And if cell phones had existed in the 60s, nobody would have used them because baby boomers are just that morally superior. Plus, this is a 2010s animated movie released by Disney, which means the ads haven't given away who the bad guy really is. But Catherine Keener is in this movie, and she plays a character named Evelyn Dever. Evelyn Dever. I hope to God that's a red herring. And truth be told, I've gotten just a little disillusioned in Brad Bird as a filmmaker. The Iron Giant, The Incredibles, and Ratatouille all remain absolute masterpieces, but Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol was kinda just an average action flick, and then we have Tomorrowland. Dear God, I wanted to like Tomorrowland. I did one of my very first One Movie Later vlogs on Tomorrowland, which you can see right up here, and witness my profound frustrated denial in real time. But that only scratched the surface. I'm probably gonna end up doing a full multi-part review of that movie for Some Jerk with a Camera Season 4, just to unpack all my opinions on it, so look for that in the distant future. Suffice to say, it was the first big hint that maybe Brad Bird was swallowing just a bit too much of his own Kool-Aid. Which leads me to perhaps my biggest skepticism concerning an Incredibles sequel in 2018. When The Incredibles first came out, and for several years after, I considered it an absolutely flawless film. But with the benefit of age and wisdom, I've come to realize that it is merely my absolute favorite movie with a core message I completely disagree with. That's right, everybody. The Incredibles is a problematic film. I mean, the execution is still flawless, don't get me wrong, and that counts for a hell of a lot, but it is still a little troubling that a bright, shiny superhero movie for kids is explicitly about a genetically superior race of people complaining that society has impeded their supremacy. Yeah. And this is not so much political as ideological. Some people have called it a Randian superhero movie. I don't quite buy that, if only because a profit-driven corporate executive is one of the antagonists and a government agent is one of the good guys. You want a Randian superhero movie, go watch Man of Steel or Batman v Superman, or better yet, don't. But The Incredibles still doesn't lack for troubling elements. I mean, for a movie made entirely on computers, it is kind of appallingly technophobic. Look at Syndrome, for example. Now, many people have rightly called Syndrome a prescient portrait of angry, toxic fan culture. He feels entitled to ownership of the thing he loves, and when that thing disappoints him, he must destroy it. The problem is, the film kind of incorrectly conflates his technical prowess with that. The film seems to genuinely believe that technological innovation just doesn't count unless you're innately born superior.
I'll sell my invention so that everyone can be super. And when everyone's super, no one will be.
Oh no, not equality, you monster! Syndrome was in the wrong Brad Bird movie. he easily would have gotten a Tomorrowland pin. I mean, his methods are abhorrent, but not his ideals. He's basically white Killmonger. But the film doesn't seem to know that because it's too busy feeling sorry for a frustrated suburban dude who thinks he's better than everyone else and just wants to prove it. Now, that's a very appealing sentiment when you're 14, and it's remained a running theme in Bird's work ever since, up to and including Tomorrowland. Usually he gets away with it because he is a very talented filmmaker who usually lives up to his own hype. And to be fair, when you work your ass off on a movie as great as The Iron Giant only to watch it crash and burn at the box office for reasons well above your pay grade, I guess it's hard not to reach the conclusion that the world has a grudge against the exceptional. But that was almost 20 years ago. The Iron Giant is showing up in Spielberg movies now. I mean, Brad, Bubala, you have 2 Oscars now. You will never have to work on The Fox and the Hound ever again. And you have no idea how many thoroughly mediocre dipshits out there think they're misunderstood geniuses. We even have one in the goddamn Oval Office. And seeing their persecution complex mirrored on the big screen like that is catnip to their massive egos. It's kind of like The Matrix in that sense, a kick-ass, groundbreaking action movie with a lot on its mind that way too many self-serving dullards read as justification for their own jackassery. But you know, say what you want about the sloppy execution of the Matrix sequels, I have a lot of respect for how they at least tried to subvert and deconstruct the more problematic aspects of the first movie. My hope is that Incredibles 2 will do something similarly self-critical, though I gotta say, Screenslaver doesn't give me a whole lot of hope. Will this be the movie where Brad Bird finally gets the hell over himself? Come on, kids, let's find out! Yay!
First world problems.
Okay, introduce yourselves.
Well, I go by Doggins, but after the movie, I think I'm going to change my screen name to the Screen Daver.
I'm the great Luke Ski, and after the movie, I'm going to change my name to Mr. and Mrs. Incredible.
I'm Zach Hurst. I go by I'm Captain Arl King of The Voyages. I'm changing my name to Confused as to what Luke was getting at with that joke.
Hi, I'm ERIKA HAYNES. I do some acting stuff. Most recently, you would have seen me take over Lost in Adaptation for the Dom's channel, and I've also been J.K. Rowling in the Harry Potter World review for this one right here. And after this movie, I'm going to change my name to Elastigirl's biggest fan.
And I'm some jerk with a camera, and after this movie, I'm changing my name to Peter Parker. Now, so we just saw The Incredibles 2, or just Incredibles. They've lopped off the for some reason. I don't know why. It was pretty good. It was, yeah,
it was fun.
It was quite solidly entertaining. Not quite as good as the first film, but then what is?
This and the Toy Story sequels are the only Pixar sequels that I feel like really justify their own existence.
It's a more cohesive whole than the first one. I feel like the first one had a bigger impact. And I think it was because it was, you know, kind of fresher at the time, but now we're like in the middle of a superhero deluge.
It enhances the experience of the first, at least for me. Because really the first movie, although it's supposed to be a movie about family, it kind of feels a little bit more like this is Mr. Incredible's movie. This is about him regaining his glory. This whole movie feels like such a breath of fresh air. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I felt like all of the family themes, which are really what is most important, really were amped up in this film.
This movie picks up literally right where the last one left off, so it's like the story is continuing. So I just consider it all one big thing, and I really loved it.
This was a story worth continuing in this world. They course corrected on some of the unfortunate thematic implications of the first movie, but it's also very much a thematic and characterization extension of the first movie.
The movie was very good at giving the characters new arcs that added to their arcs from the first movie and didn't negate. It wasn't like a reset button of, oh, I just learned this lesson, oh wait, now I have to learn it again. No, it was an evolution from the arcs they learned in the first movie.
They didn't pull a Tony Stark where he has to just like, he keeps going that arc. Yep. Keeps going.
That arc reactor.
I feel like I like the internal core of this movie more than I liked the sort of Randian ideology of the first one.
This film did correct some of that, partly by not making it as overt.
It felt like it was going in sort of more of an X-Men direction, where they were making it more like a an oppressed minority allegory.
That's how they made it work. They changed it from a metaphor for suburban conformity to a metaphor for actual oppression, and that makes it land a lot better.
That means Syndrome's big plot metaphorically is everyone will have interracial children now.
Yeah, in hindsight. Here's why I don't consider this as good a movie as the first Incredibles. Basically, most of this movie is spent bisected between Helen's plot and Bob's plot, or rather Bob and the rest of the family. For like literally half the movie's runtime, the two plots really don't have anything to do with each other. They just kind of run concurrently and you keep cutting back between them. There's very few scenes where one informs the other. Helen's story was this really intriguing superhero movie, and Bob's story was just kind of this comedy that felt almost like a Judd Apatow comedy in a way, in the sense that it didn't really have a lot of forward momentum. It was just kind of a lot of sketches. Now, they were funny. I can't think of a single scene in the Bob subplot that didn't make me laugh, but that's kind of all it did. It didn't move the story forward.
Mr. Incredible is Mr. Mom.
Yeah.
And here's all the different directions we can go with that premise.
Here's the family at a diner. Yeah. Here's the family babysit,
In Bob's subplot, there wasn't a lot of forward momentum from scene to scene,
right.
at least not in Act 2. I think they all drove the story forward thematically, even if they didn't drive the scenes forward from point A to point B the way Elastigirl's subplot did.
I'm not saying it didn't ultimately work, to be clear. I mean, it's still a very good movie. I guess this is just why I consider it not as good as the original, because it's like, during that second act, every time it cut from Helen's subplot to Bob's, it just kind of stopped the film cold for, okay, another 3 minutes of a wacky comedy sketch. And it was funny. It all worked. But in the moment, it just, that kind of wonky storytelling just felt a little frustrating to me.
That's fair. Bob and Helen are in sort of like they're on almost opposite political spectrums in a way, and they really establish it at the Chinese dinner scene. And so the rest of the movie is bringing those two together to a point of agreement.
But they spend so much of the movie apart.
But I know, but that's because they have to live in the other's shoes. It seems like Bob feels that being a parent is lesser than being a superhero, and Helen thought that being a parent was more important. They viewed themselves as these two distinct things. Helen as a mom, Bob viewed himself as a superhero. Even when he was working a desk job, he was still like, I'm a superhero wearing a suit and tie. That's all I'm doing right now.
There's been a lot of ballyhooing on the interwebs about whenever a movie comes out and it either has a female lead or it features females, taking charge and being important, and then a lot of man babies throw a fit. And
what's that on your shirt?
You mean yes. There are a lot of guys out there who aren't man babies. They're good people and they're trying to adjust to being in this world and be supportive. What's going on with Bob in this movie perfectly exemplifies something we haven't seen yet, which is someone who's like, I'm trying to be on the good and right side of things, but I still, feel frustrated because I don't get to be the one in the spotlight. I have to be the support system, and if I really care about doing what's best, I'll be that support system and put my ego aside. Hopefully that will resonate with the right people, who are savable.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to think there's a percentage of people that are savable that'll see that and go, oh, I get it now.
I'm just picturing Brad Bird with his screenplay. He's like, you're gonna learn this lesson, and you are going to like it.
The moral that Bob learns in the movie is kind of the same thing that, male characters have been learning in movies since the 70s and 80s. I feel like feminism has evolved a couple of waves since then to the point where even that arc is a little bit outdated. I do think Brad Bird is a really great writer, but I do think his sensibility is kind of stuck in the boomer era to a certain point. The jokes in this movie about new math, Tom Lehrer was making fun of new math 50 goddamn years ago.
Which is weird, because that's the thing people are actually complaining about right now.
Oh, is it? I haven't been to school for a while, so...
Yeah,
I have friends that are teachers.
Oh,
okay.
All of my friends who are either in education or who have kids, I have seen nothing but posts on my Facebook of just why did they change math?
I get it.
Common Core is about teaching people how to solve problems, not just about memorizing 2 times 4 is 8. It's about being able to dissect why 2 times 4 equals 8, and so on and so forth. And it really confuses the hell out of parents who didn't learn it that way. But it's meant to make schooling easier for kids as they get older.
You got philosophy in my math. You got math in my philosophy.
Old people math is, let's solve this in the easiest way possible so that you can spend more time doing other things, whereas new math is like, why math? Why are we learning? Why is math?
It must be the number 7.
The first Incredibles, and there's Bob, and it's mainly Bob doing fighting, you know, which is basically punch, 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 punch. And now we just saw a movie that was mostly Helen using her powers, and it's like, she is way more cool and interesting to watch fight evil.
This is the coolest superhero girl ever, and it's in a Disney film. I've never been super, like, jazzed about Mr. Fantastic. Like, every time I've, like, read the Fantastic Four stuff or, like, seen the films, which are arguably not that good.
No, they're
like, I was never like, wow. And stretchy powers are like the coolest thing ever. But the way that the first Incredibles and now Incredibles 2 did her powers made it seem like it was such a cool, awesome power to have, and why wouldn't you want stretchy powers?
There's a term out there that I've always been hesitant to use because I think there's a stigma attached to it, and it's probably a well-deserved stigma. That term is waifu, and it's a noun, fandom slang. A fictional character from non-live action visual media, typically in anime, manga, or video games, that one is attracted to and considers a significant other.
There's a huge difference between finding an animated character attractive and considering her your significant other.
Yeah.
Like,
I haven't crossed into that level of unreality, but I gotta say, when the first Incredibles movie came out, I saw it in the theater 5 times, and a lot of it had to do with Helen Parr / Elastigirl, because I just thought she was an amazing character, and you know, I had the fandom feels for her. So when I found out that the second movie was focusing on her, I was so happy, and now having seen it, it's like, thank you for giving me the thing that I wanted.
By the way, Luke, what is your waifu password?
Power Girl Leela Slave Leia
69.
132769. Hike.
It sounds like a lot of digits.
They've got Jack, who's doing all these incredible things, and haha, incredible.
After Incredibles, at least a lot of my friends at the time were telling me that Jack doesn't actually have all those powers. That's just his body, like, figuring out what he's got, so he's just shuffling through things and it's trying to, like, figure out
So, you've got a bunch of random powers.
I realize now that they gave all the kids puns. Dash obviously runs fast. Violet has her purple shield.
Jack of all trades.
Wow.
Incredibles 3 should be about Jack growing up. It should be about dealing with this kid who's got all the powers, and it's like, what do you do with that?
Can we make it so that Jack doesn't become evil? Like,
yeah,
he has so many powers.
How do you keep a kid like that from becoming a supervillain?
Yeah,
There's just a scene in the next movie where Edna holds a lightsaber over Jack sleeping in his bed.
Does that mean the villain has to be a baby?
It's going to be the baby with the one eyebrow from The Simpsons.
Every time I saw that agent, it's just because of the way the agent's character model looks. I kept expecting Tommy Lee Jones' voice to come out.
It does.
Because he looks just fucking like Tommy Lee Jones.
It looks like you took Tommy Lee Jones and then just kind of like stretched him a little bit.
Still, Jonathan Banks
It's
not
weird
too
that
shabby.
Tommy Lee Jones has been now in 3 franchises of 3 superhero franchises.
And 2 movies involving memory erasing.
I really loved how, even more than the first movie, they steered really hard into the Gucci retro future design.
Oh yeah, this is
Yeah.
beautiful, gorgeous.
Basically
Yeah.
everything our friend The Obscure talked about in that one video.
Even the characters get that same Art Deco design, and they get like those slick suits that are all like just swooshes. I do kind of agree with Tony that I think it is inferior to Incredibles 1, but mainly my thing is that it's mainly because it's a little too predictable.
You think it's gonna go, okay, maybe it'll go this way or maybe it'll go this way, and it doesn't choose a way that you didn't think of. It just goes one of the ways you thought. Brad Bird is so great at execution. Like, he is almost second to none at just executing jokes and executing action beats. You know, his ideas are sometimes a little wonky, especially in the first Incredibles movie, but man, based on Brad Bird's entire filmography up to this point, I really think he should stick to animation, because all 4 of his animated films have been kind of miles better than his 2 live-action films.
They're streets beyond, Tony.
Streets beyond, yeah. When he has full control over a scene, when as you do in animation, you have a lot less control in live action. Animation, you can go down and fix every little beat of a character's performance, and you can control the timing a lot better. Now, there's a lot more work involved, too. It's a trade-off there. But he is so damn good at it. As far as I'm concerned, he never needs to direct a live-action film again.
I wonder if part of that is just because the amount of time it takes to make an animated movie gives him like that breathing space of like, I'm going to dedicate essentially the next 2 years of my life to this one thing.
I think Brad Bird was waiting for both the set pieces and the narrative drive. They so easily could have just done another random superhero adventure as the next Incredibles movie.
Sure.
Like, they didn't have to do a continuation of exploring the themes that this family has to deal with. It could have just been a wacky hijink adventure.
This is the movie people have been demanding there be a sequel to since, was it 04 or 05?
It's 04.
04, yeah. 04. It's like, people was like, more Incredibles, more Incredibles, more Incredibles, and then they gave us, you know...
Brave.
They gave...
The Good Dinosaur.
Yeah, it's like...
Brave is a good movie, excuse you.
It's okay.
To me, the only real true
They
Pixar
shouldn't have
bomb,
fired Brenda Chapman from it.
Yeah.
in my opinion, the only true Pixar bomb is The Good Dinosaur.
Yeah.
I understand why you all say Cars 2 fine. I'm not going to argue with you about it, but move on. Tony,
But we could! Some more?
Is there any reason not to go into spoilers at this point?
Nope. Let's go into spoilers.
He's an action hero in his mind.
See, you can tell this movie was a fantasy film because the crime fighters were excited about wearing body cams.
Topical.
I hate all of you. Bob gets passed over for Elastigirl.
Yeah, it's basically the plot of Anchorman 2. It did feel a little much, though, in that scene where Bob sees Helen on the news, and he just gets insanely jealous and all full of man feels, and, why isn't it me? And blah, 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 blah. And it's like, it really made me not like Bob that much.
Well,
I mean,
to be fair, remember that his ultimate decision was not to lash out at her.
right.
It was to go help Dash with his math homework.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's
I
like
did like
it's like
that.
they're acknowledging that he has these amazing, frustrating, jealous feelings, but that rather than being hanging up the phone
And
or
that's
being
a normal human
did-
thing
yeah.
to have. Two of the things that will really tear apart a marriage are, money issues or like disparity in, success. There's a lot of instances where one partner will suddenly become more successful than the other, and it just creates this weird rift of jealousy.
That's a legitimate problem in many relationships, is to feel like you're the lesser
I
of
mean,
your
I'm not
partner.
saying that he's right for feeling that way. I'm just saying that it's a normal thing, and
Yeah.
it's probably a good thing to show that in a film, because I thought that was what was so cool about the first one, was just that, like, they showed that, like, marriage problems can happen, even to, like, people who super duper love each other.
You are allowed to feel this way.
Doesn't
because
mean
he
you're
doesn't,
right.
Because he doesn't take it out on her. He doesn't like yell at her and say like, this should be me! You're doing the things that I should do! You just you feel with him, and you even see him being like, I'm really insecure right now, but I love you too much to like take that out on you.
I'm really frustrated, but you know what I can do? I can put my all into the job that I've been given in this moment.
He has
of
the
time.
feelings, he feels the feelings, he acknowledges the feelings, he makes the decision, I'm not going to be negative or destructive about it. I'm going to be the incredible dad that I'm supposed to be. And even when that's too tough for him, he gets help from his friends, and even his own kids are helping him. And that's a healthy message to be sending to people.
I understand that, and I guess I can see that intellectually. In the moment, it didn't come across that way. It came across like he was just being a selfish jerk. I dislike it in movies when characters' arcs are really easily solvable and they just can't see it for whatever reason. Because at that moment when he's getting all frustrated man feel, it's like, dude, she's the woman you love. Be happy for her success, dagnubbit.
Bob and Helen first start discussing who's going to go back to work. Bob is just like, no, you're going to be the mom. I'm going to do the job thing. He does have like that old school 40s nuclear family vibe where like the dad's off to work now.
Yeah.
But he wants that work to be superhero work, but even if it's not, he's still going to be the one that does it.
There's a really nice scene where they're in the hotel bed, or the motel bed, and he's like, I need you to do the thing so that I can do the thing, and I'm going to suck it up. And Helen goes, that was excruciating to watch, but I understand that, you know, the core thing there. So they're calling it out, and they're saying, like, yeah, Bob's response is not really that mature.
It's like,
but the arc is that he needs to become more mature. Violet has that moment where she says, he goes, I'm sorry, I'm not a good dad. And she goes, you're not good. And she goes, you're super.
Right.
So it's really, it's like being a superhero in two different types of ways.
Which was kind of a cheeseball moment that they deflated by having him just snore.
Nothing is really beneath you. You just need to find the things about it that are you need to find the important things about it.
They foreshadowed that theme in a whole just in the fight with the Underminer, where none of the kids want to be the one babysitting.
In the beginning of the film, they're like, I don't want to take care of Jack Jack. Now, like, well, we can use Jack Jack as an asset, but we can also take the helm of saying, like, this is an important job. And Violet's like, it's more important that I stay here with Jack Jack because I can protect him. The character arc of the kids was a little bit bigger because they even talk about it in the car. This time we don't have mom or dad here with us, so we have to, like, step up.
How do you stop Mr. Incredible? It's basically like stopping Superman.
Yeah.
They don't have a Batman.
And they don't have an equivalent of kryptonite in this universe.
And I'm pretty sure none of their mothers are named Martha.
Right. So what the hell are they going to do?
Oh, no!
With the whole monorail sequence, I was really expecting her to just do the Spider-Man 2 train thing, but with her arms instead of the webs. I'm not complaining that she didn't, because that would have been derivative.
I guess they didn't, because Spider-Man 2 already did it. The Incredibles actually had that scene where Bob stopped the train, so it would have been derivative almost of their own movie, too. Yeah. And that came out like 6 months after Spider-Man 2, and they're like, well, they kicked our asses there.
Yeah, I realized now, I knew it in the theater, and I just forgot about this point between now and then. That's why Bob is so upset. Because Bob stopping that train is what spiraled the whole...
Oh my god, you're right!
Yeah.
Wow!
You're
New
right.
superheroes now.
You're right.
But
Yeah,
Helen
that's
stopping
why
a
he's so
train
mad.
is what's bringing it back. So he's mad because the same thing that broke the system is starting to fix it, but it's not him doing it.
And not only that, he was really mad about the fact that, like, you're very messy, you cause a lot of damage. Not only was it confirming that, like, people like her better, it was that he's not even good at being a superhero.
When they unveiled, you know, they cut the ribbon of the new monorail in this movie, I would have loved it so much if they had a reference to, like, Nixon not being able to cut the thing with the scissors.
Oh, to heck with it. If you can't cut it, break it. Right.
So, are we going to address the controversial topic of making babies fight raccoons?
Oh, man. You know, Rocket is not handling the Guardians dissolving well. The raccoon scene was probably my favorite scene in the movie, just because it was such a cool, pure, like, Tom and Jerry cartoon of a scene.
The raccoon scene was far and away the best Ice Age sequel.
Yes. Oh god, they moved into the over-the-hedge neighborhood. Ben Folds songs are going to start playing.
But, like, G-rated versions of Ben Folds songs.
Right.
The raccoon scene really did feel like the DVD exclusive short, like the Mike's New Car or the Jack Jack Attack.
Like, ooh.
But as part of the movie itself.
Well, we'll save that and make it its own short. I'm glad it's in the movie itself.
Jack Jack started fighting the raccoon. I was like, oh god. I was like, it's the beginnings of Jack Jack becoming a sociopath. It starts early with hurting the animal.
Or at least like a creepy backwoods hunter that started the chain of events where every member of the family has to say, Jack Jack has powers? Yeah. I missed Jack Jack's first powers? And he's like, you missed the first 17. And I'm just like, guys, all of y'all missed the first one. The only one who saw the first one is dead.
Only Syndrome and the babysitter knew about it before.
And the
babysitter gets her memory erased in the short film Jack Jack Attack.
I'm surprised the Dicker
that's on this DVD right here.
Jack Jack Attack makes sense because all of that needed to happen away from the rest of the action.
That, and then you get the reveal that Jack Jack has powers when he's up in the air with Syndrome, and it's a much better reveal.
Yeah. I'm surprised the Dicker wouldn't tell Helen and Bob that, like, but maybe he assumed that they knew, so that might be it.
Probably.
No shooting the baby in the house! Pew, 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 pew. pew, pew.
I like that you fired him by saying pew.
Yeah.
Edna had the best line delivery of a single word I've ever heard in my life, and it's just, yes.
Her total 180 of like, babies, no, they're not the thing that I do. And then like, just like that, she
As soon as she sees all the powers that Jack has, it's like, yes.
I hate people saying yes in movies. It's one of my pet peeves.
Jack, like, totally just loved her. Was like, yum, 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 yum.
That was so great. I love the fact that Edna is so mad that somebody else designed Elastigirl's costume. The detail on the fabric is so good with Pixar that you can tell that it's not quite as good a quality a suit as Edna would have made. You can kind of see the individually stitched sequence that make the EG symbol on her chest.
Elastigirl got the new shiny outfit, and she was like, I'm not angsty. I'm Elastigirl.
I'm not my own dark and gritty reboot.
What was the villain's name again?
Evelyn Dever.
Evelyn Dever.
Yes.
Get it? Because evil endeavor.
I didn't get that. That's
I got that immediately.
Oh.
Yeah, you got that when they released the cast list.
Yeah.
Is Evelyn Dever worse than Toe Mater?
Nothing is worse than Toe Mater. But
Special Agent Toe Mater.
Double Toe 7, you fucking... Anyway.
In both films, both of the villains were like, I'm very technologically advanced, and like I felt like they were making this really weird juxtaposition of technology versus natural superpowers, and I was like, what are you trying to say?
Yeah.
Like that all people who are geniuses and smart and inventors, that they're all evil?
Well, in the first film, it was a lot more overt. Here, it's a little more downplayed. She's not operating from a position of jealousy.
And we always have, like, as that counterbalance, Edna Mode.
Right.
Edna Mode is the counterbalance to whatever
That's true.
happens. And in this case, we also had the brother, who was, you know, not a bad guy.
Yeah,
a shockingly cheerful Bob Odenkirk.
They called Saul, I guess.
The scene at the beginning, they were talking about their parents' death, and he kind of lashed out at her a little bit. Like, you know, there was at least one take where he just let out a
God damn it!
Right. In the first act, I thought, okay, I know at least one of these Dever twins are going to turn out to be the villain. It just feels like there's no other way they can do it, but which one or maybe both?
I almost expected them to be a bait and switch, and it was going to be like that ambassador.
Angela Merkel as herself.
Yeah.
We feel the superpower should be spread equally amongst the people.
Did you notice, by the way, her name was Ambassador Selleck, and when she signed her name, it was H. Selleck. Was that a reference to Henry Selleck, you think?
oh, maybe.
Who was with Brad Bird and John Lasseter in the first graduating class of Cal Arts, if I'm not
Which,
mistaken.
by the way, they got their A113 at the end of the movie.
Dementia A113.
That's the Animation 101 classroom at Cal Arts, where
Brad Bird puts a reference to it in every movie.
Like who else?
And I think also every Simpsons episode he's ever directed. Like even the Do the Bartman video has an A113.
That has an A113.
It's in every Pixar.
But like, who else came out of that class? Like Tim Burton and
Tim Burton, John Lasseter, I think John Musker.
A113 is also in The Brave Little Toaster.
Yes.
It's the master's apartment number. And it's the license plate in Toy Story, so
Right.
So A113
it's
has
all
a
over
long
the place.
history.
So it's like-
but Cal Arts is overrated now, man.
Cal Arts style.
See, here's the thing.
It's like they all have the
People use Cal Arts the same way edgelords use SJW as just something I don't like.
Like didn't John Kay start most of the Cal Arts style?
John Kay
bitching
was a big
and
thing about it, and it was basically, like an anti-elitist sort of thing, because like that's the Disney
because if there's one
It's
person
like-
whose judgment you can trust, it's John Crispolucci.
It's like, oh, these people got opportunities that I didn't get, so therefore it's bad.
The opening new Disney Castle version.
Oh
my gosh!
So pretty.
That was very
so pretty.
Basically, everything they watched on TV was a non-Disney property.
Yeah.
Jack was watching The Outer Limits, which now we know why they had to close Tower of Terror, because it would have been conflict of interest to have Twilight Zone in the same park as Incredicoaster if they're an Outer Limits family.
They showed, them watching an episode of Johnny Quest. During one of those scenes when Elastigirl was up on the tower at night, one of the buildings in the background says Quest Industries.
I saw that, Quest Industries.
To me, I consider this kind of a callback to the first movie when Bob is looking at his wall of achievements and stuff. I'd have to get like a Blu-ray and see if I could really crisply see what it says. But it appears to be an LP.
Yes.
So
they talk about that in the commentary.
Yeah.
Mr. Incredible sings. The backstory in their minds was that at one point, Mr. Incredible kind of went through a Shatner phase and decided to record his own album.
Without knowing that, in my mind, I'm like, oh, that must have meant that there was a Mr. Incredible theme song. So when they started the whole bit with them singing each other's theme songs, I'm like, that's so cool. They had theme songs.
I loved the theme songs so much. They all played over the end credits, and it was so great.
They were very good.
And I love how much Elastigirls harkens to the Wonder Woman theme.
Yep.
From the 77
Yeah,
Linda Carter series.
yeah.
It's so perfect. Oh, and speaking of which, side note, go to YouTube and look for Whitney Avalon's YouTube page. She just did a tribute song to The Incredibles dressed as Elastigirl. The song is called Flexible.
You gotta be flexible when a jet destroys your home. Be flexible. Thanks so much for that syndrome.
I love that the Incredible went to just some rich collector.
Yeah, that was Chekhov's supercar right there.
I'd also like to point out that basically every building they're in kind of looked like Tony Stark's mansion, and we got a scene where the Sam Jackson superhero emerges from the shadows.
Yep.
So,
Although, is Nick Fury really a superhero?
Well, he was wearing a long coat to cover up that he was still wearing his Frozone tights.
Yes.
Right.
So in the shadow coming in really had a Nick Fury look to it.
He's Nick Flurry, as all the trailers called him.
Yes.
I had a moment where I totally thought Frozone was gonna be the villain, like in some weird twist of the film.
he was kind
That
of...
would have jumped the shark.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but I get it. He was kind of ominous in that scene at the motel
Yeah,
pool.
because he was like, the way he was talking about it was very like, I've got a secret, and maybe I'm going to trick you.
I thought there was a chance, not that he'd be like the mastermind, but I thought there was a chance he might already be brainwashed.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. I thought maybe that,
yeah,
like, it would
fair
be
enough.
some weird twist where, like, I don't know, whatever the Dever twins were peddling, like, he really liked their philosophy of it and, like, you know, did a 180 of, like, I'm on this side of, like, the superheroes have been pushed into the shadows, so we should be evil about it, or something. I didn't know where they were going at that point, so I was worried.
Okay.
I was like, let's not make Lucius evil.
I'm never gonna forgive them for Evelyn Dever. I'm sorry. My gut instinct kind of told me that Bob Odenkirk was gonna end up being the villain just because that kind of smarmy, you know, internet billionaire type guy always seems to end up being the villain in this kind of story. And it would have been such a great surprise to reveal, you know, no, his sister's really the villain, if not for that stupid name.
They could have just listed her as Evelyn and not had a last name.
I think they say, like, I'm Winston Dever, this is my sister Evelyn. ERIKA didn't pick up on that the entire movie.
Yeah.
So I feel like...
I guess. To be perfectly fair, the villain in Incredibles 1 was predictable as well. Like from the moment you saw him in the shadows...
Surprising. We must bring him back.
I recognize that as Jason Lee. That's the kid from the prologue, and he's evil now.
Winston is just taking things that people don't know that they want that are actually good, like superheroes, and, you know, changing it. And so he's using, quote unquote, his superpower of salesmanship. It was kind of nice to see, like, a salesperson type character who's, like, genuinely a good person. Because,
Yeah.
like, usually salespeople, I mean, I've worked in sales and they're not all the best people.
I really did think that was where they were going with that, just because
Yeah.
I'm so used to characters like that being unscrupulous. The scene where they flash back to when their parents got murdered by burglars, I thought it was going to be revealed that they were the burglars. Like, I almost thought that's where they were going with that. Like, they wanted to, you know, inherit, like it was a Menendez brothers situation where they wanted to inherit the money sooner.
I thought it was going to be revealed that the mother didn't actually die. She just faked her death, and that maybe she was going to end up being the screenslaver.
Welcome to the new One Movie Later segment. What's the plot twist?
Bob Odenkirk's backstory was basically Bruce Wayne's backstory.
Yeah.
Except instead of becoming a superhero, he just idolized superheroes.
Yeah.
He can't just turn himself into a superhero, even though that's what Syndrome was doing.
I was always really bored with Syndrome. I was like, I get it. You're jealous.
Syndrome does feel like a teenager.
The best villains don't perceive themselves as the villain, and Evelyn, like, even when her plan is going down, she makes the effort to go save her brother. He wakes up to what's going on, and he's like, no, I'm gonna go save these supers. I'm going to be with them.
And I loved her character model and how expressive she was. I kind of felt like they were going for like a evil Holly Golightly feel with her. Because like she really did remind me of Holly Golightly, especially with like her big wide brimmed hat that like was kind of covering her face and the glasses, and she's stumbling in. She keeps coming in with like alcohol, and I'm like, ah, cool, you're very subtly saying that she's an alcoholic.
Elvin always looked slightly disheveled. Like,
Yeah.
you know, Elvin always looked.
It just always felt like she had this like really brooding sense to her, but she was like your cool friend who like wants to gab and gal talk with you. Yeah, I'm your cool friend, and I'm kind of like, you know, a party girl, but like it's cool, you know, I've got it all together. And then she was evil.
The main hero and the main villain in this movie were both female. That was kind of nice.
Even when she was being quote unquote evil, like she always had this motivation of like, I'm doing the right thing because superheroes are what are causing us to not take care of ourselves, which is kind of a valid point.
It's only a valid point if you strip it away from all the other metaphors the movie's making.
Right.
But
She did kind of feel Randian in her own way. If you read her hatred of superheroes as a metaphor for hatred of the government, it almost felt like it was trying to be a rebuke of the unintentional politics of the first film. It didn't quite go so far as to outright subvert the first film.
She had this idea that I think is founded in like some kind of military philosophy. She was like, superheroes stop progress. Because superheroes mean that we don't need anything, and if we don't need anything, nothing gets made. It is stagnation through comfort. When someone brings in a dragon, there's nothing that you can invent that will stop the dragon immediately kills you before you can think of anything to stop it. And because you have this super powerful thing, you don't need to get further, you don't need to advance yourself any further either, so no progress gets made. I could see that perspective. I don't agree with it. Those politics are the politics of Bob. Because that's, or at least that's how Bob perceives himself, and that's why Bob does feel that stifled, like I should be better than everyone else sort of vibe.
Right.
Bob is neutral good and Helen is lawful good.
We gotta talk about the fucking screenslaver monologue, because I practically rolled my eyes out of my head at all that shit. It's like, instead of talking, you watch talk shows. Instead of playing games, you watch game shows. Instead of experiencing reality, you watch reality shows. Man, it was like the worst. It was like the most intolerable YouTube show imaginable. Remember to like, share, and subscribe.
You're just slaves to the screen, man.
You're all a bunch of slaves!
The people that actually believe that stuff are not going to hear their philosophy spouted by the villain.
Well, yeah, but it's
Never
just...
stopped
I will say part of it was also that, you know, he's saying this while he's on TV.
By the way, I'm aware of the irony of appearing on TV in order to decry it, so don't bother pointing that out.
I guess I just kind of generally don't like the idea of, ooh, the TV is hypnotizing you, because fucking Batman Forever did that shit 20 years ago, and it was stupid then.
She's just being a douche about it.
let's just say she was being very Randy Moore about it all.
Yes, exactly. I'm Randy Moore.
The big, long, stupid speech was intentionally stupid and long because it was a trap. It is harkening back to the first movie where basically Mr. Incredible kind of tricks Syndrome into monologuing, and that was the whole plan, is to lure out him, get him monologuing over the airwaves, and then following...
But technically, she didn't lure out Screenslaver because it was Evelyn.
I am getting a little tired of the villain wanted to be caught trope.
The villain didn't want to be caught. She wanted her fall guy to be caught. So
yeah.
if it wasn't obvious from Evelyn Dever's name that she was the villain, the line that really drove it home was right after they capture the fake Screenslaver, and Helen says, "You're a genius," and Evelyn says, "I'm just the genius behind the genius."
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, well, that's a confession.
I thought that she meant that she was doing the tech, and Winston was technically...
Well, that's what she wants you to think.
And I thought that was what they were foreshadowing, was that they were like a duo, and he was like making the supervillain as like an excuse to like get the superheroes back into the ring. I didn't expect it to be Evelyn's just like, no, fuck superheroes, they can get the fuck out. Those characters basically have the same backstory as Samuel L. Jackson does in Unbreakable. And this may be why I thought they had made Screenslaver as like the villain, so Elastigirl could like stop that villain, and that's how they. So basically, they're like creating a problem so they could mark it off.
I kind of thought that's what was going to happen.
And now I realize why I thought that. So I'm kind of glad they didn't go that direction, because that would have just been derivative of a different movie. It looks like she literally had this, Plan B, literally in her back pocket, which was, those goggles that she just slaps on her head as soon as she gets too close. That was creepy. Seeing them like walk around with just those big blue screen eyes, it's a little haunting.
I love that even in a movie like this, where it's a sequel, but all the characters are original, it still has to eventually be a superhero team-up movie. Even if it's just team-ups of newly created superheroes.
You've got Brick, who's just like lines for days, and then you've got Void, who is very like wavy.
I'm hoping and assuming they made character action figures for them.
Maybe.
Because I definitely want a Void action figure.
What was the old guy? The Reflux or something?
Yeah, the Reflux.
Like, I took one look at that character design and was like, man, if Ernest Borgnine was still alive, he'd be voicing you.
The Void encounters Elastigirl and just gushes about how, oh my god, I always thought I was a freak, but then I found out about you. It was such a perfect distillation of why representation fucking matters.
Yeah.
Especially because
it was such a spot-on metaphor.
Especially because Void herself was clearly a very queerish character. She's
Yeah.
got a mohawk. She's not really a mohawk even. It's like a one-sided.
Elastigirl had a mohawk.
We don't get to see it, but we are missing
neon
much.
blue and her suit's neon green with purple on it. And I'm just like,
There are some visual signifiers.
Yeah.
And
there,
also she
definitely.
had like really, really cool powers.
Her power was basically being really good at playing Portal.
A bunch of stupid edgelords on the internet are gonna be crying, oh, Pixar's SJW bullshit. And when really, the only scene that really discussed it overtly was the scene where the superhero was talking about how much representation mattered. And it's like, you're gonna take the purest distillation of quote-unquote the SJW narrative of people just wanting to see themselves on screen, and you're gonna find a way to complain about that, which I know they fucking will. So, have fun making yourselves look like even bigger monsters.
To be fair, your thesis was people are going to be assholes on the internet. Which
That's always a safe bet.
I liked L337.
What, you mean R2 Me Too? We didn't say it in the solo vlog, so I'm saying it here.
I expected L3 to go around taking everybody's goggles off.
Oh my god, she's called Screenslaver because it's about minorities, and so they put slaver in her name.
What?
No.
That's a stretch.
They were sort of mixing metaphors for all different stripes of oppressed people. Helen says something about, like, the kids don't know what they are yet.
Right.
Or something like that. Bobbin says, no, the kids are supers even if they don't show it.
Yeah, and he wants to give them that option, obviously.
Yeah.
And who wouldn't?
She was like, they don't know who they are yet, so they don't need to figure it out right now. And Bob's argument was, no, they should be allowed to experiment and figure out who they are right now so that they can make the choice later, which I thought was like, you're right, that is very similar to certain political debates.
If they make an Incredibles 3, if there's a super who just really does just chooses not to. She's like, I'm good. I can teleport, but I really don't want to do that right now.
Well, they do that in the X-Men. Yeah. They did that with Rogue, where Rogue was like, yeah, my powers kind of suck. I really don't want them.
They did that in Megamind, where the Brad Pitt character just decides to quit.
Yeah.
After the first film, practically leveled the city in the climactic scene, this one, it was about stopping the destruction from happening. And it didn't sacrifice any of the action or any of the exciting, beats of trying to get that boat to steer around. It felt to me like kind of a subtweet directed at Man of Steel.
Probably.
Like, we've had so much destruction porn in superhero movies in the last 5 years or so, let's do a movie where the goal is not to destroy everything.
Yeah.
It helped reduce the henchman casualties, considering all the henchmen were brainwashed superheroes.
They didn't even kill the villain in this one.
Yeah.
They killed the villain in the first film.
Well, she specifically made the point, just because, I know you doesn't mean that I'm going to help you or that I owe you anything. And then Helen goes, yes, but I don't know you either, and I would still save you. Even in the end, she still does that, and I like that.
Underminer got away.
Oh yeah, Underminer could still show
Just
up
like
again.
Bon Voyage got away.
Yeah, that's true. Not
He
more
had to get
parallels.
away, otherwise he wouldn't be undermining.
Also, who else would John Ratzenberger play in Incredibles 3?
A different person? I don't think so.
No,
Never.
Pshaw. No one was alive then.
We need to answer the most important unanswered question. What was up with that short with the anthropomorphic dumpling?
That ultimately worked for me because, yeah, it got kind of fucked up at one point, but then it kind of takes a left turn where it becomes sweet again. The dumpling was never real in the first place. It was just the mother having hallucinations based on her relationship
So
with her
this is a
estranged
story
son.
about a mother going crazy
Yeah.
and possibly eating a 17-year-old dumpling.
No, the eating it was a metaphor for pushing the son out of her life forever and going like, okay, you want to marry that girl, don't ever talk to us again.
The main character was a woman?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Somehow I didn't see
She
that
was very
character.
ambiguously designed.
Yes,
true.
So basically, it was a mother and father, and then the son comes back at the end because there was some misunderstanding. So this whole thing with the dumpling was basically her fantasy about their relationship and how she felt sad about it, and then the son comes home and they make up.
metaphor, man.
What I'm more disturbed by is that the dumpling/son at the end looked like an Asian Charlie. The dumpling itself creeped me the fuck out.
Yeah.
Especially like when it's first like popping out limbs. I'm sitting there like,
I heard you
I
in
was
the
like-
theater, you were like,
no.
I was
No, be gone, foul demon.
I was just like, well,
Also, let's appreciate the irony that they had Craig T. Nelson, Brad Bird, Holly Hunter, excuse me, like, and Samuel L. Jackson do this big build-up. 14 years you've all been waiting. Oh, well, there's the thing. And now, here's the Incredibles.
I don't know if that'll
And then
be
the
in-
short starts. It's like,
Yeah.
come on!
I don't know if that'll be in every movie theater. That might have been like an AMC exclusive
Possibly.
or something.
I also really liked that everybody in the audience had the exact same reation when she ate the little dumpling baby.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, they were
everybody was just
horrified.
like, whoa! You ate!
It's like, this is fucked up. What the hell is this?
Because you're like,
It's an animated mother.
I thought that maybe like the whole thing was a metaphor for like her really wanting a kid so badly that she was like imagining this little dumpling as a kid, and then like her eating it at the end like would like pseudo make her pregnant, and she'd be like, "Oh, I found out I was pregnant because I just wanted the little dumpling
so
baby."
that's what I thought the same thing. I want to have a baby, but my husband's inattentive and we can't have one together, and so I've got this little dumpling baby. And then she like ate it. I was like, was that an abortion? What?
I was very confused. Like, I was like, all right, you just did like, you went way off track here. I do not know what's happening. And then they brought it back, and I was like, ah, okay, I got it. But like, for those like 5 seconds, I was just like,
They described like the climactic moment as the memorial all is lost, and everybody in that theater lost the goddamn plot. We were like, what the fuck is happening right
They were just
now?
lost their minds. They were just like, whoa!
Before the actual kid showed up, I kept expecting you to hear like gurgles from her
Oh,
stomach.
God.
And I was just like, there is no way this could go where I'm not gonna feel weird. They at least picked the one that was like the least weird. Even at the end, you're like, I understand that this is a metaphor.
That
I
was
still
still
don't understand.
But I
why
can't
plot-
unsee what I've seen.
I can't unsee you shoving your child in your mouth.
In your mouth!
Pixar slid into vor so gradually I hardly even noticed.
No!
We had to look out
Finding Nemo kind of heavy.
Oh, God.
Be on the lookout for Pooh Baby Zombie, coming soon from Pixar.
Really, like,
Baby
thought-
zombie.
Yeah,
So anyway, there was a movie after that traumatic experience. It is time for What's the Attraction? The Incredicoaster is opening at DCA, replacing California Screamin'. How do you think the events of this movie will impact either the Incredicoaster or Pixar Pier in general, or anywhere else in one of the theme parks. ERIKA!
The Incredicoaster splits off into 2 coasters in one and stretches across like Elastigirl on her bike, and then you're like, woo, half my coaster's over here, and the other half is over here, and then it puts back together, and then it's like, woo!
I mean, that was the original plan for the Dudley Do-Right ride,
Yeah,
so...
it's true. Zach!
So what's going to happen is actually on the Disneyland Railroad, you're going to go forward for about 5 feet, and then the train's suddenly going to start going backwards, and one of you has to figure out a way to become a human parachute to stop it from careening off the tracks.
So that's just on the railroad, not on the monorail?
Just on the railroad. The monorail just... Fuck the monorail. It's gone now.
You're unnecessarily hostile towards the monorail.
Fuck the monorail! The monorail killed my mom! Sorry, Mom, you're dead.
Luke!
The big drink dispenser that looks like Baby Jack, but like the suit's like all puffy, and it's gonna be full of the boysenberry fluff stuff that happens when they're the flavor retardant stuff. So yummy, tasty.
Boysenberry.
Moving on Knotz's turf.
Dave!
We have heard announcement that there will be an Edna Mode animatronic somewhere in the Incredicoaster queue. Turns out what that animatronic will actually be is the child swap, and it will be babysitting your kids while you ride the ride.
Well, unfortunately, you are all very wrong. What's gonna happen is that midway through the ride, it's just gonna stop, and Edna Mode is going to have a vigorous political debate about capes with Lando. That's what's gonna happen. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, hooray for new math! New math! It won't do you a bit good to review math. It's so simple, so very simple, that only a child can do it! Come back next week, we're gonna do demisals.
Because you're brainwashed, yeah. You are brainwashed. Because you're brainwashed, yeah.
And since they had all those theme songs at the end of the credits, we gotta do one movie later. Ba ba da ba ba da. What could be greater? Ba 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 ba. Compare and contrast the preconceptions facing the camera's direction. One movie later. One movie later. It's my show.
Okay, we need to go through all of our theme songs now.
Okay.
Dave hasn't made a new video in a year. That's my theme song.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
I actually have the theme song. It's 3
Yeah, that's true.
All right, everybody, where did that kid go? Oh, never mind.
Yes, just like that, you can do the thing. Yes, just like that, oh, you can do the thing.
Are you expecting more one movie later? I'm too busy designing a tuxedo for Jim Cummings for Christopher Robin. Now go away!